the way I heard it reported was the way you look at a situation was the way he.
Interesting. I saw that the Sfas Emes, the son of Chiddush Harim, that he had said something along these lines, but more like along the lines of that Oneg Shabbos can be a cure to tzaras. But I didn't see this. It's interesting that the Chiddush Harim. I was looking for something like that. I imagined somebody would say something along those lines, but I didn't see that. I'll just share with you something very, very clever that I heard in Gulf Manor Synagogue many, many years ago, having to do with oneg and the spelling of oneg. Actually, when the sanctuary that is pictured behind Rabbi Alt was being refurbished, so the whole shul moved for months into the social hall, and that's where the things were taking place. So I walked one Shabbos morning. I walked into shul before davening began. I don't think I was giving the Chumash shir. This may have even it may have even been before we gave the Chumash shir. I don't remember. It was a very long time ago, and I noticed there was a gentleman there, distinguished-looking fellow, sitting there with his tallis on already. And before I had a chance to go over to him, he came over to me and asked me if I was related to my uncle. I have an uncle, my uncle Label, Dr. Lee Spetner. He wanted to know who used to live in Washington, D.C., he lives in Eretz Yisrael, wanted to know if I was related to him. I said, yeah, he's my uncle, etc. I said, oh, he knew him. He grew up in Washington, D.C. So who was this man? His name was Rabbi Eddie Davis. So now Rabbi Eddie Davis, I was familiar with him because I was a rabbi in Richmond, Virginia before I came to Cincinnati. And he also used to be a rabbi in Richmond, Virginia in the other shul, but before I got there. But I would still receive weekly his Shabbos bulletins in the mail. And he had a fantastic repertoire of things I learned along the way. Just incredible facts. Fascinating man. So he's now, I think, either semi or completely retired. He was the rabbi for many years in Hollywood, Florida, in the University of Hollywood. So Rabbi Davis, though, was in Cincinnati for Shabbos. Now, why was he in Cincinnati for Shabbos? He was in Cincinnati for Shabbos because he got stuck there. How did he get stuck there? So, and Rabbi Balk had invited him to say the drasha, because he was a distinguished rabbi. How did he get stuck there? So he told the story in the drasha that what happened was one of his children became engaged in Toronto, and at the time, Delta had a commuter airline called ComAir, and all the flights changed planes in Cincinnati. So it was in the middle of the winter, and they were supposed to fly on Thursday to Toronto. They changed planes in Cincinnati, and there's bad weather in Toronto, very bad weather. And the flights don't take off. They put everybody up in a hotel. And the next morning they come back to the airport, and some camaraderie had developed among the passengers, and it kept on rolling delay. And finally, it gets to the point where he's got to make arrangements for Shabbos already. It's a winter Shabbos early. So by about noon, he realizes it's not happening. So he called somebody, made arrangements for Shabbos. So one of the other passengers who he's schmoozing with says, well, so Rabbi, imagine you have to go back to the hotel for the Sabbath. So he says, no, I'm staying with somebody in Cincinnati. He says, oh, you know people there? He says, no, I don't know anybody there. He says, you don't know anybody there and you're staying there for the Sabbath? He said, yeah. The guy thinks and says, Rabbi, you live in a different world than I live in. That was his response. That's what the fellow told. Now, it happens to be that Shabbos, somebody there, Ronnie Gottlieb, who used to live in Cincinnati, had with him Rabbi Fran's new book, which Rabbi Fran's son had just given me as a present, but I hadn't really looked at it yet. So I picked it up that afternoon, and the very first story in the book, as far as I remember, went like this: that a meshulach, a collector, was driving north on Interstate 95 from Miami area to north. And in some small town in Florida, he got pulled over for speeding, and he got hauled in front of the mayor's court, or the judge right there, and he got to pay the fine right on the spot. So he pulls out a big wad of cash, thousands of dollars in cash, and the little courtroom there freezes because the Interstate 95 was like a drug alley. So there was like somebody carrying that much cash was extremely suspect. So so the judge says, wait a second, where did you get that cash? He said, well, I was collecting money in South Florida. I'm from Israel, and I was collecting money. So he says, well, do you have any references? He says, yeah, here's the name of a rabbi in South Florida. So the judge calls up the rabbi right there, and he says to the rabbi, he says, there's a fellow who came here, describes him, and he says he collected over $10,000 in your community. So he says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He says, well, do you know this man? He says, no, I don't know him. He says, I don't understand. You don't know him, and he collected $10,000 in your community? He says, yeah. The judge says, Rabbi, you live in a different world than I live in. So I went over to Rabbi Davis later that evening. I said, were you the rabbi? I think he was. He was the rabbi. He seems to attract those types of questions. But I want to bring you back, though, to what the rest of the drasha that he said. He began by telling the following story, if you'll call it. He says, hundreds of years ago, a group of monks in Italy, in the monastery, had a shaila. They had a big question about an issue having to do with the early issues in the church. And they sent one of the oldest monks down to the catacombs in the bottom of the monastery, where some of the oldest archives of the church documents were there, and to take a look and see what's written there. So they wait an hour or two. This old monk doesn't come back up, and they start getting worried about him. So they send a search party down for him. And as they come down there with their torches, and they see, as they get down to the catacombs, they see that this monk is there with the torch, and he's leaning over a piece of parchment, and he's crying and mumbling to himself. And as they get closer, they hear what he's saying. They hear him saying, it says celebrate, not celibate. So he said, so that was the joke that he told. So then he said, but then he tied it into our Torah, which actually I can share with you a little bit of it here if you can read it. Hold on, let's see if we can take a look at this. I don't know if it's readable, but he says, and Shlomo Zalman talks about this idea. It's really from the Zidichover Rebbe, but the firstborn are supposed to fast on Erev Pesach is a very tenuous source for it in halacha. It begins from a Masechah Sofrim, but it's very strange that the Rishonim don't quote it. And so the Zidichover Rebbe said that the language of the Masechah Sofrim is that on it says on the Masechah Sofrim habechoros misanin Erev Pesach, they fast. But he said it's a change in it's not supposed to say misanin, which means to fast. It's supposed to have a gimel in there. It's supposed to say misangin, that they enjoy themselves in Erev Pesach because they were saved. So they don't have to fast. They were saved. The Jewish firstborn were saved, like the Egyptians, so they should enjoy themselves. So so he said it's supposed to be, doesn't say fast. It's supposed to say enjoy. Like that was his connection to the celebrate and the celebrate. So it's supposed to be, and so Reb Shlomo Zalman, I think, said as a sort of like a half humorously, he says the reality is that no one really fasts. Everyone enjoys themselves at a siyum. So in the end of the day, it really ends up that they are misangin. It's his change in the girsa, his change in the text. Really, in the end of the day, his text changed to say that instead of misanin, it's fast. It's misangim, is to enjoy yourself. Really has been fulfilled, because that's really what happens throughout Klal Yisrael. Everyone has a little vodka and a little macaroons and some hard-boiled eggs, and everyone has a good time. So that's the connection between the misanin and misangin. So this shir has been a little bit about nega, a little bit about an affliction, and how we can turn it around, as Rabbi Alt mentioned from the Chiddushei HaRim, into oneg, into enjoyment. And for that, I want to wish everybody that everyone should have a very enjoyable, oneg-filled Shabbos. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Spetner. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Take care. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.